So welcome everyone to today's webinar. I am really excited to share my guests with you. I'm going to do a screen share so that we're following along. Today you are joining us for designing your way to a better return, how working with an interior designer increases your ROI. And this is one of the opportunities, I think, that is available to us as investors that I think is really dramatically underutilized. And that's really why I invited Jessy and Katie to be my guests on this webinar, because I think a lot of us assume that an architect or an engineer, or even we, can design a space and maximize the space efficiently. And I've seen again and again where I think I've done a great job, or I think my team has done a great job, and I take my designs to an interior designer and they just take it to a whole other level. So I think this is a great opportunity for a couple of interior designers to share their ideas, their insights, expertise, and show you how adding an interior designer to your team can actually make a dramatic difference in the returns that you're getting in your BRRRR projects, your renovations, your flips, all the different investment strategies that really utilize renovations to upgrade and provide a better return on a space. So just a couple of things, a little bit of housekeeping as we get started here for everyone to be able to enjoy today's webinar. So there is a chat panel at the bottom, and that's where I encourage you to interact with us, provide feedback. If someone says something and you agree with it, let us know. If you have, thoughts or comments you want to share with everyone, please use the chat box at the bottom. Just make sure that you click on all panelists and attendees. The Zoom, for whatever reason, defaults to all panelists. So if you don't change the drop down to all panelists and attendees, then the only people who see your comment will be myself and the two panelists who are joining us. So in order to have an interactive webinar, please make sure you change the drop down to all panelists and attendees. Now, in the event that you have a question that you would like our panelists to answer for you, a specific question, please use the Q&A box at the bottom, because what happens when people fire questions into the chat, as the chat progresses, we lose your question. So the Q&A screen handles questions differently. So this is a great opportunity for us to be able to interact with you and to be able to not lose track with your questions while still being able to have the conversation in the chat panel. So please make sure you utilize the chat and the Q&A so that we can all have a great time and hear what you guys are thinking and what you think of what everybody's presenting. So my name's Elizabeth Kelly. For those of you who don't know me, I have been a real estate investor for the last 15 years. And I have been a trainer for Rich Dad. I am now a coach and a consultant for investors who want to learn more about how to invest in real estate. So whether you're just starting out or whether you've got some properties under your belt and you kind of hit a snag or some challenges, my goal is to help you level up as quickly and easily as possible. Today we are joined by Katie, and Katie I've known for, I guess we're coming up about a year now. Katie is an interior designer, and we have to congratulate Katie because Katie just left her day job and she is now a full-time interior designer and real estate investor. So let's hear it for Katie. That's awesome. What an accomplishment. That is something that we are all striving for, Katie. So congratulations. I'm sure you will absolutely love being an entrepreneur and a full-time investor. So Katie was originally born and raised in Northern Ontario, spent the last 10 years in the design industry, and received a ton of awards for her visions, her ideas, and her execution. Katie is also an active real estate investor. She's done a number of successful BRRRR renovations, and she and her boyfriend have a property management and design company in Haliburton, Ontario. So White Pine Properties is where you can find Katie if you want to connect with her in the future. We are also joined by Jessy. So Jessy is based in Toronto. Jessy also has a ton of design experience, more in, I think a little more on the commercial side, focusing on larger projects, some of like office spaces and large scale renovations. And Jesse and his partner Scott also do some fantastic Airbnb, and they have a number of investment properties. They have a BRRRR on the go as well. So one of my favorite things is to be able to introduce you to people who understand and get what it's like to be a real estate investor. So Jesse and Katie, thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to learning from both of you. So I'm going to stop the screen share. Katie is going to spend 15 minutes sharing some of her wisdom and her insights with us. And then Katie is going to turn it over to Jesse, and I will be back at the end to monitor questions. So we will be covering all the Q&As at the end of the webinar once the speakers have had a chance to kind of go through their presentation. And then we will be wrapping it up right around 1 o'clock, so you guys can get back to work or get back to your vacations, whatever you're doing today. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And over to you, Katie.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, as Elizabeth said. I'm very excited to be here today. And I'm going to share some of my wisdom and knowledge to you guys today, so you can see kind of what we would recommend in getting the best ROI for your businesses. So I'm just going to share my screen now so I can get my presentation open here for you. Okay, here we go. So my presentation is a little long, so if there's anything that I've kind of missed going over, please let me know, and I can actually send you the PDF at the end of this presentation to your email or whatever you would prefer. So the number one thing I'm going to talk about is maximizing income. So this is the main thing we all want to do with our income properties, is get the most money for our investments. So getting the best ROI, or return on your investment, for your property can come in a variety of different ways. One thing would be exclusive and unique design to make your short-term and long-term rental properties stand out from the rest, to create the best revenue stream and get the best possible tenant. One of the other things I thought was super interesting to go over with you guys today would be actually looking to your demographic. And so once you find your target market, actually tailor your design to appeal those that you want to rent to. So for example, if you're in an area where there's lots of elderly, design appropriately and possibly use specialized design for those individuals so the space will be functional for them. Or for example, perhaps if there's an area where there's up and coming businesses and lots of young professionals are moving to the area, maybe you should make that space like a little bit more trendy and unique for those individuals. Another really important thing that I wanted to go over was definitely figure out the top rent that you can charge in the area that you've purchased, and base your renovation budget on that. Definitely don't overspend based on your location. So for example, if you can only get kind of not a limited amount of rent, but maybe not quite as much rent as another one of your rental properties, maybe get a little bit more creative with your design. Spend a little bit less and still make it look awesome, but definitely don't overspend. And if you're in a market where you can actually get a luxury, like high-end dollar, then go all out with the luxury materials and things like that. Again, you can still save money with creative design, but that's definitely something to keep in mind with your renovations. The next thing would be, if you're using the BRRRR method for long-term investment properties, this will definitely increase your appraisal and after repair value to grow your portfolio. So in regards to great design. And again, with using a designer or having great design, a designer can help you actually create a detailed budget and design plan for your renovation. And this will be super helpful for when working with investors or banks to get the funding you may need for both long-term and short-term investment properties. And so an example of this would be if you're doing like a purchase plus improvement. So you'll have to kind of go over that with the bank to show them how much money you would need to put forward to get your renovation completed. Another super important thing would be filling your vacancy voids. So these are just some creative ways to get the best tenant fast and effectively with design services. So some creative things that we could look at doing are interior 3D renderings. And so this could actually show what a space would look like even before a renovation has been completed. So you can get your space rented out even quicker. And this would work for both long-term and short-term properties again. And even you could do virtual staging instead of having somebody come on stage and take pictures. So that's just like another option. I'll show you an example of this in a minute as well. Another example of this would be vision boards. So vision boards would outline key project selections to give the essence, or as I like to call it, vibe of the space. Designs could also be used for promotional materials, and having professionally staged or styled photography could also be used for short-term and long-term properties as well. And then finally, also photography would also be super important for social media, because you could also use that for growing your following, which is super important for getting investors or as like somebody that has a short-term Airbnb property. So some examples of some 3D renderings would be this here. So the photo on the left, this is actually a project that we're working on right now. This is the kitchen before on the left-hand side. And then the right is a rendering that we show what the kitchen will look like after. So we don't have a lot on our social media yet because we've just started, but this will be a really fun and exciting project for you guys to follow along. And I encourage you to look us up so you can keep on track with us in our renovation here. And then here is an example of a vision board. So as you can see, this kind of just gives like the overall essence of the space, showing some key materials from like materials for the flooring, finishes, wall colors, accessories, things like that. So that could obviously be something that would be super important when showing your design to get people excited for it as well. And then the next really important thing that I wanted to go over with you is design tips for scalability. So this would be incorporating or implementing proper systems for scaling your business. And so using a designer, you could have them create internal systems or documents for increased productivity. And then this would in turn save you time and money when it comes to building or renovating. I feel super duper duper passionate about this. And in that regard, I want to talk to you about project schedules. So schedules are charts that outline every product that has been selected and used for a design project. These charts are extremely organized and can be used as a tool that can be given to your trade professionals or property manager to reference at any point. They can be used time and time again in the future, and no details will be misplaced or forgotten again. So for example, say you have a rental property and you're switching tenants, and then your property manager or painter or whoever you're working with asks you what the paint color is. And that detail, for whatever reason, gets lost. And instead of trying to color match the paint, you could just go back to your schedule, find any detail about any material or finish that you use in the space, and then they can just take that to the paint store and get whatever paint that was originally picked, repainted again in the space. Just as an example, but these schedules are amazing, and I would encourage people to definitely use them and implement them into their projects. Another huge thing that I would recommend if you have a build or renovation would be to incorporate using a site binder. So a site binder would be a binder that you would have at your site at all time with the permits, plans, specs, and schedules, so that whoever needs to access that information can easily find what they need during the build or renovation. And so this would be like another example of like an item getting misplaced. So say there's a multiple array of trades on site. If one of them takes one of the plans and they're calling you, trying to get new ones printed, if you tell all your trades that you have a site binder on site with everything they need, then you'll never have to worry about anybody calling you in that regard again. So that's just another example of saving time and money. So right here, this is an example of a project schedule. This one doesn't have quite as many details as like a whole project would, but this is just going along with my case study of the kitchen that I showed. So again, it just has like a product photo, manufacturer, item number, like all the information of where it's installed and things like that that can be referenced by anybody, just to keep you really organized. And then the next section here is just something as a fun takeaway that I wanted you guys to have today. So these are recommendations that I wanted to make for you guys for fast and inexpensive design tips and upgrades. So these would be the things that I would recommend to people that they could do right away, inexpensively, to create a positive change in their investment property. So definitely a huge one is paint. It's crazy how much of a big impact paint can make, even if it's like a really simple thing. So changing a paint color can definitely help to freshen up a space, make it feel newer, and even make the space feel larger. So some of my top Benjamin Moore color recommendations include Chantilly lace. So you can either use Chantilly lace on its own, as far as like using it for the wall color as well as the trim and ceiling, for example. Everybody likes this color because it's just the purest white in our opinion. And then the second color here, silver satin. You wouldn't believe how many people in our rental properties ask us what color this is, and so they could recommend it to their friends and family. So silver satin's another really great one. If you were to paint silver satin on the walls, I would recommend either using the Chantilly lace or the Oxford white as your ceiling and trim color. And then the last one here is my personal favorite, Oxford white. So it's a little bit creamier, I guess, maybe than Chantilly lace, but Oxford white is also really nice. And again, you can use it for the walls and the trim and ceiling if you'd like. Second thing here would be lighting. So lighting also plays a massive role in a space and is often overlooked. And a huge tip from me would be to always install warm white. So warm white is a temperature of a bulb, and the temperature of a bulb is actually called kelvins. And so sometimes you'll see the temperature listed on the back of your bulb package when you're looking to buy it at the store, and make sure it's between 2,500 and 3,000 kelvins. And make sure if it's an open space that all your lighting temperature matches throughout. It definitely makes for a cozy and more inviting atmosphere, and your tenants will definitely love you for it. Lighting is another area that can provide a lot of impact without spending a lot of money. So get rid of the boob lights already and have fun with it as an item that can be easily swapped out down the road. So as you can see, these are just a few like fun options that I picked off Wayfair to give you an example. But you could see how those would provide a lot more of an impact to a space compared to the really simple lights that we sometimes have. So that's another really easy area that we can upgrade. Lastly here, we have hardware and fixtures. So another way to drastically update the look of your investment property is to update the hardware or upgrade it throughout. Hardware can include cabinetry pulls, interior doorknobs and levers, etc. So don't be afraid to mix materials. Mixing materials creates a more curated look, and it often looks much more expensive than having everything the exact same finish throughout. So for example, you can do like matte black hardware on your door levels for your interior door, and then you could also maybe do like brass hardware for your kitchen, for example. My only recommendation is in design, you definitely want to have repetition and harmony. So make sure that these elements are continued throughout your space so that you can achieve that look. Plumbing fixtures are another area that are relatively easy to switch out that will provide a huge positive change for a space, not only for aesthetics, but also in functionality. Areas to make the switch would include your main kitchen sink, as well as bathroom vanity faucets. So for this, obviously, if you're not handy or don't feel confident, you would have to get a plumber to install this for you. But your tenants would also still love you so much if you changed out your kitchen faucet that didn't have a spray out or a pull-out sprayer, as it makes it really hard to wash dishes if you don't. So that's a really simple upgrade that would look great and also be a lot more functional for them as well. But yeah, that's my presentation for today. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. And as I said, if you'd like to have it sent to you, just send me an email and I will send you the PDF copy. And I'm excited to pass the presentation on to Jesse now, and I can't wait for you to hear what he has to share as well.
Thanks, Katie and Elizabeth, for hosting the webinar. This is a really great session for investors. I'm going to share my screen here. There we go. So my name is Jesse. I've been an interior designer for about 8 years now. I've been primarily practicing in the commercial industry for that time, and I've done projects from 60,000 to 100,000 square feet. And I've ventured off into quite a few residential design projects as well, helping investors make their spaces look better for their renters or future home buyers. So today I'll be walking you through three reasons all investors should consider working with an interior designer to help earn a higher ROI on your investments. I'll also be showing you 2 real-life case studies of my own projects, and the first will be a commercial property turned to residential, so a commercial to residential conversion. And the second will be my own property, which we've used the BRRRR strategy and short-term rental strategy together to earn us a higher ROI on that project. So how designers can help. So the average professional doing permit drawings is usually not the best trained. Oh, are we stuck on the main slide? Oh, we are. Okay, sorry about that. Let me just unshare and I'll get that back on track. Okay, so the average professional doing permit drawings or engineer or even investor themselves are not fully trained for creating the most optimally functional space. So when they renovate, oftentimes it can be not fully optimized, and you can often add a lot more to a space than what's already there. It's not always to your best advantage to renovate a space and simply go for the least expensive renovation. Sometimes it makes sense to look at the space holistically and maybe move a wall or add a washroom to make it usable for future guests. Designers are also more experienced in knowing what increases and decreases the value of a home. For example, as Katie mentioned, light fixtures, faucets, paint colors, all of that great stuff. And we're also tend to make better decisions when it comes to space planning a space and knowing what types of furniture fits in a space properly to enhance the flow of a space. Designers tend to have the best resources. So we have a really broad network of industry professionals, people who have their BCIN licenses who can apply for a permit for us. We know engineers, electricians, tradesmen. We also have relationships with furniture vendors and material dealers and suppliers. So great tile at an amazing discount, or LVT flooring at a great discount. And we also, the same thing applies to the average consumer goods for furniture and accessories for a home. So appealing to the masses, not just personal taste. So oftentimes an investor or a homeowner will design their space to appeal to themselves, and that's great if they're going to live in the space for a really long time. But when you're looking at investment properties, you want to design for the masses and not just your own personal taste, and that's where a designer can really help bring the space together. And we sort of have our eye on what's in the trends at that point in time, and making sure that it stays timeless for a diverse group of home buyers and renters. And in the end, it saves you money with material choices. We can help you source material choices that are durable and lasting, especially if you're going to have long-term renters staying in the space. You don't want a floor that's going to be destroyed within the first year just because it's not as durable as other floors. So now for the case studies. So this first case study is a office conversion to a fourplex in downtown London, Ontario. So this client is transforming the space into 4 units, each with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living space. And this will allow the owner to rent the space for top dollar in the short rental market. I also want to mention this space is a 1800s triple brick Victorian building out in a great neighborhood in London, Ontario. And we're going to be comparing here between doing 1 bedroom for each unit and the 2 bedrooms for each unit. So on the left side of the screen here, you have the before. This layout was previously drawn by another professional in the industry who was not an interior designer. They did a great job in terms of keeping the costs down, not adding a whole lot of walls, and not demolishing a whole lot of walls either, simply adding what's necessary for the space to be livable. And you can see here, it's a very large, lovely kitchen, large living room, and 1 bedroom. But what the client was really after is a higher ROI. So meaning more bedrooms, how many people can we get in this space and in turn rent it for that much more per night or that much more per month, depending on whether they want to do long-term or short-term. And in this case, we're doing the short-term rental first and planning for long-term rental in the future, should that be necessary. So on the right side of the screen, you can see the after with the 2 bedrooms in each unit here and here, keeping a lovely living space with a lovely kitchen as well. So the estimates that we pulled, sorry, I'm just going to move this window. I can close it, there we go. So the increased property value that we estimate that we brought to the home based on comparables in the area is $200,000 for 4 bedrooms for 8 bedrooms instead of 4 bedrooms in this entire building. The increased rental income, 1 bedroom versus 2 bedrooms, we're estimating that it'll bring in $80,000 or $80 more per night in the short-term rental market. So that gives us an increased gross rent of $6,420 per month or $74,880 per year. And that's calculated with a 64% occupancy rate based on AirDNA data, which is quite conservative given this area of London and the quality of units, proper management, and pricing. So this just goes to show you that great design and great space planning can really increase your return on investment. Had this property been only a 1 bedroom, you wouldn't see all of these numbers come through at the end of the renovation. The second case study, the Charlotte PC, is a property in Picton, Ontario, also an 1800s home, a duplex. And the project here was upgrading all the finishes, adding furniture for short-term rentals, and renovating a 2nd floor washroom to give us the top dollar rental rates for the night. So on the left side of the screen here, you can see the before. This washroom was in very bad condition when we inherited the property. The bathtub was located under a slanted ceiling with not a lot of space between the sink and the bathtub. And then the toilet was sort of jammed in the small little corner here by the door, which was really uncomfortable when you entered the washroom. Plus, not to mention, you could hardly stand in the bathtub because the ceiling was so low that you could only shower when you were right up against the wall here. So this was a must renovate for us. So it involved renovating the whole, almost the whole 2nd floor of this side of the house. So what we did was we rotated the tub, kept the existing tub, rotated it 90 degrees, pulled it forward so that it's not under the slanted ceiling anymore. The slanted ceiling basically stopped where this wall is right now. And then providing you with a standard bathroom layout, sink, toilet, tub, all in a row, giving you more space at the door when you walk in and in front of the tub when you get in. This allowed us to put in a closet in the master bedroom, which is a lot better than the original layout here. It didn't really change much for the 2nd bedroom other than the entrance is a little bit smaller now. So the increased property value that we estimate here based on comparables again in the area is $190,000. The increased rental income is $7,200 a month or $86,400 a year. I also want to mention that in 2019, this property was rented for $2,000 a month. So that's quite a big jump here, just in increased rent alone each month with having this property on the short-term rental market. I do want to mention that the numbers above are actually still conservative, and that in August 2021 alone, the gross revenue was $33,000. Keeping in mind that COVID created a hot demand for STA properties in the Prince Edward County region. So we may or may not see this influx of tourism in the industry in this area next year. But we're hopeful that we'll still achieve these numbers here. The ROI on the bathroom reno alone gave us 100% cash-on-cash ROI in 1 year, and 100% five-star reviews and great guest feedback. Increasing the nightly rate on this unit was about $100 more than we could have charged in the pre-reno pricing. So here are just a few photos of this, this house at the before and after. So the before bathroom here with the slanted ceiling, you can see in the back here. There's the tub at the bottom. And then in the after, you can see the tub here is no longer under the slanted ceiling. And you have a beautiful new vanity, beautifully designed washroom. The kitchen, we decided to replace the cabinets with an inexpensive IKEA kitchen. And then in the bedroom, simply just updating the paint, updating the floor and new furniture. And it really turns the corner for this property. A few more pictures of the property here. This is all after photos. And that's all I have for today. In the end, we save you time and money while increasing your ROI. So if you're interested in learning more, please give us a follow on Instagram, Jessy Helmer Studio, and we'll be posting updates there monthly. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thanks so much, guys. I think everybody must have been busy taking notes because nobody posted any questions. So this is the opportunity for everybody to ask questions now. What have you always, wanted to know from an interior design perspective in terms of, what is, and maybe I'll start by asking, what if someone has a small budget, what do you recommend? What's the first thing you would go to in terms of, would you say you would address flooring first? Does paint provide the biggest bang? Like if you can only pick one of sort of the painting, flooring, or fixtures, what would provide the biggest return?
That's a tough question, but I would definitely say the flooring is probably the best one there. Paint is just so easy and inexpensive that I think both are kind of a no-brainer if they're in bad condition. Flooring can tend to be more expensive though if you're looking at hardwood and tile. So for sure the paint, and then if you can, the flooring. Yeah. Perfect.
Katie, any thoughts to add before we go to Melissa's question?
Yeah, again, I guess it's really dependent on what the space looks like originally, but I guess just looking at the space, whatever you feel like the thing that you hate the most would probably be the thing somebody else would hate the most. So if that's the flooring, then I would definitely agree with Jessy. If there's like horrendous colors on the walls, then maybe just paint to get a neutral palette would be the best thing. Again, just like referring to my presentation where I was talking about like light fixtures and paint and fixtures, just look at the thing that you hate the most in the space and upgrade from there.
That's such a great tip. It's funny, in my experience, the stuff that bothers me the most is not what bothers my husband the most. Like my husband, like he has a joke that he could sleep on stairs. But for me, like having a bedroom that's warm and inviting and that provides a tranquil place, that's really important to me, as well as having a functional kitchen. So I think it really goes to the points you spoke about, where it's important that you know who your market is. And I would imagine that there's differences in, you know, when you're catering towards the short-term rental market versus where you're catering towards the long-term rental market. So maybe we can circle back to that in a couple of minutes, and we'll just address. So Melissa said, what are your best tips for designing a small space, say less than 200 square feet?
I personally would say make things have multi-uses. So like maybe your dining table could also serve as a desk. That's kind of a silly example, but just make sure your items in the space have multiple purposes, because in a small space that goes a long way. So maybe like if it's a bed situation, like maybe you're able to incorporate something like a Murphy bed so it can fold up and out of the way when it's not being used. So that gives you more floor space during the day. But yeah, just definitely look at things that have like multi-use purposes for sure.
I just want to add to that, definitely light colors on the walls to make a small space seem bigger, and a lot of great lighting just to make sure your lighting is all the same temperature, and up lighting makes a big difference if the ceilings are low in that small space, so it can make the ceilings look a little bit higher than they really are.
Mm-hmm. I think storage would be something that you would really pay a lot of attention to. Like, you're not going to pick a coffee table that's just like just here's a table. You would choose stuff that has multiple purposes in it too, right? And provides as much functional space as possible. Yeah,
a great example is a bed with storage underneath it. That gives you tons of storage in the bedroom, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Okay, so Prav said, what type or color of kitchen backsplash increases the home's value for reappraisal or flip?
Probably the easiest and most appealing to the largest crowd would be white subway tile. Probably the no-brainer for a kitchen backsplash.
Absolutely. It really kind of brings the kitchen together. In my opinion, having a backsplash in a kitchen is the difference between a lower end and a higher end feel in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Now we're getting lots of questions. Okay. So some people are putting them in the chat box. So give me a second to go to the Q&A and we'll wrap up those, and then I'll come back to the chat and try not to lose anybody. Okay. So any recommendation for the combination of flooring and paint or the color scheme? I'm not sure who asked that question, but I think Katie had a couple of great recommendations for her favorite paint colors. Do you have flooring that you particularly love with those paint colors, Katie?
I think anything lighter these days is better in my opinion. So maybe something that has like a nice texture to it, something that kind of looks like a nice like white oak. There's really great LVT planks, so luxury vinyl plank options now that we can buy. Ones that are even like 100% waterproof that have really good warranties. So I would look at something kind of like that has a nice neutral white oak tone. We don't want anything with like an overly red undertone or things like that, but just kind of something with a very neutral base to it.
Awesome. Love that. And the color schemes, there's a lot of gray, or is gray kind of past and we're moving into a different direction now?
In my opinion, I think when we're picking colors, we should always stay kind of, if you're going to go with gray, go with a warmer gray. And like I was saying, just to create like a more of a warm and inviting space. Me personally, like depending on the size of it, I like the colors that I suggested, for example, like silver satin. It's like a really nice warm gray, almost kind of as a white, but a little bit darker than a white. But definitely, like if you went with a white tone as well, you wouldn't be going wrong with that either.
Okay. And the nice thing about having something that's sort of a stable color, what we've done in our property management company is we've chosen one color that is our company color. And then every time tenants move out, it's really easy to do touch-ups and to do, work. Like, we're not struggling trying to remember, what color did we put in this unit? It's not, we had one painter who liked to come up and like use up all kinds of like loose ends from our paint room, and no color could ever be replicated. It was a nightmare. So we just always have the same color consistently. All the walls, all the trim, all the ceilings, everything's the same color and the same finish. And it makes it so much easier to do tenant turnovers or tenant rollovers.
Yeah, I find designers will like that too. We all have our favorite whites and our favorite grays and stuff. So yeah. It's great for investment properties.
Absolutely. Diana asked a really cool question, and I love this because I've had this conversation with investors before. She said, how important is having a tub these days as opposed to just a shower?
I debated that one a long time, and the answer came, I think, from a real estate agent. And the consensus is if you're going to have more than 2 bedrooms and the possibility of children, it's probably best to have a tub because it's hard to give a young child, a bath in a stand-up shower. But so if you have the opportunity, a tub is a good idea. If you're over 2 bedrooms, under 2 bedrooms, probably can do a shower is probably fine.
I agree with Jessy completely.
Yeah, and that was the consensus that we reached as well. If your target market, and this again is where it's so important to know and understand who your target market is, because if your target market is executives or professionals or single people, you can probably get away with a stand-up shower. It's not going to be a huge turnoff, but you're absolutely right. You know, with people with small children, it definitely can be a deal breaker for them. So you're reducing the amount of people that your unit would appeal to, right?
Yeah,
Definitely.
like Elizabeth said about target markets too, that's a super huge thing to consider as well. Because like I was saying during my presentation about knowing your target market, pretend that you were in a situation where you were having investment properties for elderly, then maybe you would look at having a curbless shower or something of that nature. Even though other people would also love to have a curbless shower too.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. And just a follow-up question before we jump to the ones in the chat box. Plastic surround in the bathtub versus tile surround. Is it worth it to do the tile versus the plastic?
I guess it, again, depends on your market and depends how much you can charge for rent. You can get some pretty cool like textured surrounds. You can even get surrounds that you could put like awesome customizational like patterns and things like that on. So there's definitely a lot of options when it comes to that. Me personally, I think like to make it look the best at the end of the day, I think tile is always kind of the way to go, in my opinion, for the best like return on your investment.
I find tile has a better lifespan to it. Like that, I find the shower surrounds, especially when it's pieces, like it's a different thing if it's the bath fitter where you bring in and it's all in one. I find that has better longevity. But the one that's the panels that you put up, I just find that there's only a certain lifespan to them. They start to yellow, they crack, they let water in. Like I don't personally, if you have the budget, so I would say the tub surround, the piece tub surround is like lower level. The bath fitter type thing where they just come in and they do an all-in-one install would be sort of mid-level. And then, you know, your tile showers would be sort of top of the line. Would that, would you guys both agree with that?
I think that's right. Yeah, the bath fitter one though is something to consider if you can, if you're going to do a long-term rental, because it's a lot easier to maintain and clean. Where tile can be problematic sometimes if you're not sure if your tenants are going to clean it regularly. So it depends on the market again. Yeah,
you're so right, because like the bath fitter one, like we've literally power washed them. So they are definitely better for long-term rentals. I find sometimes with tile too, I don't know what people do in the showers, but sometimes they crack the tiles or the grout gets all moldy and disgusting. So there's definitely something to be said for bath fitter for long-term rentals. You're right.
I guess as far as grout goes, one tip is always use sealed power grout. Don't skimp on that.
Okay. Sure. That's good to know. Always use the sealed one.
In a wet area. Yeah, that's very important.
Absolutely. Okay, so somebody said, what's the pricing for virtual staging and designing for the best space use? So can you guys provide an idea sort of your pricing? How much people should, you know, if people are looking at doing a big reno, how much should they put aside for design expertise?
I'm still kind of in the process of creating my website, so this could be a fun and exciting thing for you guys to check in on me and like our Instagram and website, as we're still developing that right now. Typically for like virtual staging and rendering, that's typically something that could cost maybe a little bit more than you would expect, but again, it's definitely something that could be used time and time again. So like every single time you go to rent out your property again for promotional materials, for even putting like on your social media to get like more investors and things like that. So it definitely would be worth it. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jessy?
For rendering specifically, I would say a lot of designers will charge an hourly rate based on number of revisions as well. So, and the hourly rate can differ between, you know, $70 an hour to $150 an hour. And depending on the amount of revisions, it can take, you know, 10 to 50 hours to produce just one view, depending on what the client's needs are. And if you want more views, then of course that adds up to a lot.
So it sounds like it would be really helpful to have a pretty good idea of what you know you want, and not just kind of go in blindly and say, you know, show me a bunch of options. Like you really want to say, okay, this is what I want to do with the space. This is who my target market is, or my avatar. And, you know, this is the way I want them to feel. This is the kind of look, you know, even if you go on Pinterest and come up with some ideas of stuff that you like, it sounds like the more information you can provide to your designer, the more efficient and more effective their time is going to be.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And a lot of design. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jessy.
Designers can also offer virtual staging too. So if you've helped your client through a renovation and you did need renderings at all for the renovation, you can still help them get their place on the market with virtual staging. So you would go in and take photos of the space while it's empty, and then you would add furniture through rendering, and that's a lot less time consuming for a designer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it would be fantastic because then you wouldn't have to do, because as investors, we always look at things from a time perspective, right? So how much time are we going to lose waiting for final completion, cleaning, then all the staging stuff comes in. And staging's not cheap in and of itself. So if we can shorten that time frame and, you know, come in sort of a similar ballpark in terms of finished result, I love that idea. Okay, so time frames from design to completion of reno. Oh, sorry, I'll come back to your question, Melissa. I just realized I skipped it. So what are the time frames from design to completion of the reno? Both speakers respond to homes they just featured.
Is that a question about how much time it would take to design a whole project? So sort of like one of my case studies?
I think what Pam is asking is, so from when you started designing, when you designed the new space to when the renovation was finished, how long did that take? And I think that would be a very customized thing based on the scope of the renovation that was being done. Obviously, a small scale renovation, you know, if let's take, for example, the bathroom, Jessy. So how long from when you came up with the new design until the bathroom was completed in that space? And hopefully this is what Pam's looking for.
Yeah, just the bathroom, it would be hard to say. I can tell you like an 800 square foot unit might take like 180 hours to design. So that's, you know, a few weeks, yeah. Does that help?
I think a lot of the time too, designers will offer initial consultations where you'll actually go over the space in detail with them, like we were talking about with Elizabeth a few minutes ago, based on another question. And then from that, we would kind of pinpoint what the actual scope of work was. And then from there, we would then estimate your contracted hours for that scope of work. So you would actually know approximately like the money figure of how much that would cost. And then hopefully from there, we would be able to give you a better idea about time as well.
Definitely. So yeah, it definitely takes a very prescribed scope of work to be able to identify that. Yeah.
Okay. So Pam clarified a bit here, and she said the reno time of the case study shown. So how long did the bathroom renos take? It might be hard for you to break down because you were doing, when you the property that you did the bathroom reno, you did the kitchen at the same time, right?
Yeah, so I did the whole property and furnishing it at the same time as well, but I can sort of ballpark what it took me for the bathroom, and this is not at all accurate. I would say maybe 60 hours just to do the bathroom. The more replanning there is, the more time it takes because you've got to consider all options. And then I
think she's asking how long the renos took as well.
Oh, the renos. About 3 weeks. A bathroom reno, yeah, a bathroom reno is not that long to do if you have your right contractors lined up.
Yeah, that's another thing. Definitely make sure that you have contractors in place, because we're seeing time and time again now how it's going to be more difficult to access trades if you don't have that lined up, as well as everything down to ordering like materials and definitely like new appliances and things like that. So when you're planning your project, sometimes it definitely is helpful to work with a designer in that regard. If you're doing it yourself, definitely make sure that you order things well in advance, because it does take sometimes up to 6 months, not only maybe sometimes to like a year to get certain things.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's interesting. Scott was actually saying it's worth keeping in mind that there are cost savings from working with the designer. So between the materials, choosing the right materials, the discounts, the time, the designer's hourly rate can sometimes be a wash, but you end up with a project that's much, much higher in quality.
Definitely. Yep. That's a huge deal.
Okay, 2 more quick questions before we wrap up. So Melissa asked if you guys have any thoughts on the epoxy countertops. Like, there's so many cool videos of people doing epoxy countertops in kitchens and bathrooms right now. What do you guys think of them?
Myself personally, I love dealing with quartz just because I think it's almost an industry standard now. And with germs and stuff these days, it's awesome because it's not microbial or anything like that. So my personal preference is to always go with quartz. Even if you look for a quartz product like Cambria that has a lifetime transferable warranty, if anything ever happens to your counters, like a chip or like a crack or anything like that, you're paying a little bit more upfront, but it's basically covered for your tenants because it's also covered for commercial properties as well. So whether those things are like super awesome and like they're kind of a cost saving thing, I would definitely like recommend it if it's something that would kind of completely transform your countertops. But looking at other options for your ROI would also be something that I would consider you kind of like weighing out the options for.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with Katie. Quartz is the industry standard because of its simplicity and its durability. It is probably one of the more expensive ones. And the other thing with poured, I'm assuming this is poured epoxy, is you want to really make sure that your contractors know what they're doing, because you can end up with something that's really kind of wonky on the edges and not poured perfectly, because it will need a mold to sort of sit in like a concrete countertop too. But then there are great alternatives like Corian, which is a type of epoxy, I guess you can call it, which is prefabricated just like a quartz countertop and fitted the same way as a quartz countertop, and it's also easily repaired if there are any scratches.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are full of just a wealth of information. So last one, any tips for a galley kitchen in terms of increasing the appeal?
I mean, it just depends on the layout of the entire house, I think. The layout of the kitchen, I think, is dictated more by the rest of the house rather than just the desire for a galley kitchen itself. Sort of like whether it makes sense to add an island or not, it more depends on if there's room for an island and not just, whether you want the island or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, sometimes when we have sort of ideas in our heads and it's not necessarily the areas that we're expertise on, we sort of get stuck with an idea. And sometimes by showing a space to someone who is an expert in that area, they may have some fantastic ideas that we hadn't even thought about.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely can help change kind of get unstuck when you're trying to renovate something to talk to a designer. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Any thoughts, Katie, on the galley kitchen?
I think increasing the appeal. I really like the example that Jesse showed in one of his case studies where he kind of mixed the materials, because I'm also a huge fan of mixing materials because I feel like it makes the space look more interesting and curated. So for example, maybe your lower cabinets are a different color than your upper cabinets, and then your hardware is like a different finish than like your faucet or something, say. Maybe you combine like mostly like closed storage, depending on if it's like a long or short-term property. For a long-term property, I'd probably provide more closed storage, but maybe you also provide like some open shelving and a nice like wood material, and then you have a nice backsplash and countertop. Yeah, just like mixing materials. And I think keeping it unique and interesting would be something that I would recommend for sure.
I just want to mention, I didn't understand that question. I didn't hear that question properly. I thought the question was any tips on whether galley kitchens make sense to add in a space. Sorry, but I totally agree with Katie's comments. That's totally right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to both of you. I'm just going to do a quick screen share here so that everybody can see where you can find us. If you're looking to connect with Katie, Instagram and Facebook are the best place for her. Jessy, Instagram and email would be the best place. And then you guys obviously know where to find me as well. I can't thank both of you enough. This was so much fun. This is not a direction I've really gone in before, but I so enjoyed this and being able to talk a little bit about design and having some fun with this. So my next evening webinar that's coming up is liability mitigation for investors. Not super sexy or fun to talk about, but it's so, so, so important. You know, there's a saying in real estate that it's not if you get sued, it's when. So the question is, what are the things that we can do to set ourselves up for success so that if that lawsuit comes along, then we are prepared and we have planned and we've done everything we can to mitigate any liability or any losses that might arise. So that's going to be on Monday, September 13th. I have Milena Cardinal from Cardinal Law, and I have Michael Switzer from Switzer Litigation. The two of them together are quite interesting, and Michael has a lot of personality. So that should be a great webinar to attend, not just from an information perspective, but also from an entertainment value as well. So hope you guys are ready and able to join me Monday, September 13th. Emails will be going out next week in terms of registering. So thank you so much, Jessy and Katie. It was such a pleasure having you both here. We learned a ton. Feedback is great. Really enjoyed this presentation. Thank you. Thank you so much to all of you who took time out from your busy day and from your summer vacation or your job to join us. Hope you enjoyed it all. This will be posted on YouTube and the recording will be sent out in the wrap-up email as well. So if you want to check back in and grab, for example, Katie's paint numbers, then you'll be able to do that and take a better look at some of Jessy's drawings, because that's some pretty awesome returns from working with the designer. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a fantastic week. Thanks, Jessy and Katie. You guys take care. We'll see y'all again soon. Bye.